Positive Outcomes teaching session. Just a quick reminder to use this presentation for informational purposes only and to refrain from copying. Ensure that you try and include experiences of your own practice when answering questions where possible, obviously. So the first question we're going to look at is explain how multiple factors can contribute to uncertainty in lives of children and young people. So poverty is a significant threat to health and well-being of children and young people. Growing up in poverty can affect every area of a child's development. If a child or young person has a poor diet, it can have a knock-on effect to their education. It can have a knock-on effect to their overall health. If you are living off fruit and vegetables and fresh meat, your body is going to be receiving the nutrients it needs. If we live in poverty, you're going to be struggling to purchase the fresh meats, the vegetables, the fruits. Therefore, you're more likely to live off processed foods and things such as chicken nuggets and pizzas and sausages and things like that, which in turn, a processed diet can affect your physical capabilities, your mental capabilities, even if you have a high sugar diet. So sugary things are actually quite cheap. You know, if you're buying chocolate bars and crisps and things, they're incredibly unhealthy, but because of their more financially purchasable, I suppose, they're more likely to be foods that are supplied to children and young people that have come from this sort of background. When a child or young person is in a poverty environment, they are less likely to receive the opportunities and supports. They have inadequate access to additional resources, such as being able to go to the gym, such as being able to join gymnastic clubs, such as even the silly things like going to the dentist and paying for a filling to be done or to have braces, or even getting the transportation to the health appointments. Therefore, it has an overall impact on the health. If you've got poor diet and poor health, it can have an impact on whether a child or young person attends school. They may not be able to manage school because if they can't ascertain the concentration levels that they need. It also does have an impact on obviously their long-term health. You know, children and young people who have a poor diet, you see it every day. You know, children who have a poor diet are quite often ill. They quite often pick up every single bug, every single cold going. They have problems with their tummy. They have problems sleeping. It's a really common occurrence, and we see it every single day in the world, let alone for children who have come into the care system. Poverty can actually have long-term effects. So long-term effects for poverty are crime, employment prospects, homelessness, long-term health problems, and difficulties in building and maintaining positive relationships. Now, why might that be? If you've come from a background of poverty and you are struggling to buy things that you need, I don't know, trainers, clothes, even food, it may result in a child or a young person or an adult stealing. They might steal the items. They might not be able to get in a job because if they had poverty as a child and weren't able to attend education. It could have affected their employment chances. Therefore, if they can't get a job, they haven't got any money, they may result to crime. Again, hand in hand, it could lead to homelessness. If you can't get a job because you weren't able to attend school, how are you going to pay for a roof over your head? Long-term health problems. So long-term health problems is is a fact, isn't it? If you've been raised off a really poor diet, or you've had lack of health treatment, so going to the doctors, going to the dentist, the opticians, places like that, it's likely that you're going to suffer from long-term health. So do remember, when we look at poverty as well, not to make the assumption that a child would be underweight. We have to keep into our mind as well that because of the processed food is cheaper, they're the more likely the food choices that parents will turn to. And because of that, they are higher in carbs, higher in sugars, and therefore it can actually result in a child having obesity, which therefore in turn can result to them developing diabetes in later life. So it's really important to recognise how poverty does have a trickling effect on a child's life and into adulthood. So let's have a look at the impact of social and cultural factors on the lives of children and young people. So first of all, the most obvious one is being in care. Being in care is a massive impact in a child's life. When they are a child themselves, looking at them being judged, being segregated, it's a really it's a really massive thing. They have this almost an element of isolation to other children within the school environment, or playing even at the park. So being in care is one thing. You've got things such as housing and community, you've got educational environments. They may well have not been able to attend mainstream schools. Again, we spoke about earlier about the possibility of crime. So there may be an element of offending behaviour and antisocial behaviour. We've spoken about the health and status as well. Sometimes, if we look into the family as well, look at the family's background. If the child or young person has come from a background where the families are addicts, they're addicted to heroin or alcohol, it can actually trickle through into the children as well. So the children will actually perhaps be seeking the same sort of substances to help them get by. Or in another aspect, it could be that the child's parents are addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they're spending all their money on drugs and alcohol. So this is a factor of a life of a child where the parents' background is going to impact the child's life. You've got things such as obviously religious beliefs, and you've got cultural beliefs and marginalisation and exclusion. So there is obviously a multitude of cultural and religious beliefs. We know there is arranged marriages or forced marriages. These children can be incredibly young, and if you are being married off at a very young age, it's going to have a detrimental impact on you as a child. It could result in a lot of trauma. So you have to keep that in mind. There is many cultures out there that will not accept blood transfusions, such as Jehovah's Witnesses. If you have a child that comes from the Jehovah's Witness religion and they have a significant illness, or they could be even at risk of dying, they're not allowed to receive blood. So that is going to have an impact on that child's life. There is an absolute multitude of elements that can answer this question. I have put bullet points on here, but please do not bullet point when answering this question. Find a few that you think are relevant to you and your job role and answer in sentences. So let's look at how personal choices and experiences available to children and young people can impact their outcomes and life chances. So a child or young person will be faced with many choices as they grow and develop. Some of these choices can be negative impacts on their outcomes and life chances. This is the same for experiences. However, some experiences are not through choice and can happen naturally in a child or young person's life. It's important to be a positive influence on a child or young person's life, demonstrating good role modelling. You can do this by creating good relationships with children and young people and providing them with opportunities and listening to them and their aspirations. So we spoke about this earlier. We spoke about how a child could be raised in a particular background where the young person has been subjected to the parents being addicts. Therefore, if a child's been raised in that environment and they have seen their parents be substance misusers for pretty much all of their lives, do you think it's a likely possibility that a child will follow that pattern? Do you think it's likely that a child will grow and develop into a teenager and follow what they've been role modelled from their parents? It's quite likely, isn't it? Think about it as well as not attending education. You know, their families could have come from a whole line of generations where they don't believe in education, or they haven't attended education and not thought it was important. Therefore, it can actually have an impact on the outcomes of the child's life. Now let's think about the daily experiences that you may be experiencing within residential childcare. You may be looking after a child or young person that's come from the family environment. Maybe they smoke. Maybe they have been neglected. Therefore, they've got involved with different people who have given them different influences. Maybe they are using drugs. Maybe they are using alcohol. Think about how these personal life choices that the child is making can actually impact them long term. If you've got a child that's smoking or substance abuse, you're going to educate, you're going to teach, you're going to try and encourage them to not do that, because long term it can obviously cause lung disease, it can cause liver failure, especially if there's a child drinking alcohol under the age of 18. It can have a detrimental effect. So it's about re-educating and giving the child the opportunity to be able to see different ways of life, I suppose, really. So again, when you're answering this question, think about how it's relevant to you within your job role. You can talk about an array of factors, but try and incorporate an example. Maybe you've got a young person that's smoking, maybe you're trying to help them give up, because of long term it can actually have an impact. Let's have a look at some more examples. So we've got the impact of smoking. We've got the impact of negative peer groups, which I mentioned earlier, getting involved with children or even peers who are a little bit older than them who smoke and do drugs or alcohol. There is an impact of violent and aggressive behaviour as well. There is an impact of refusing education. So I've put refusing education because quite often or not, if a young person has come from their home and they have not been encouraged to engage in education, sometimes it's actually a case of that you're working with the young person and they're blatantly refusing to go. And they could well be refusing to go based on their experiences they've had whilst with their parents. If they've been coming from a background of poverty, has it been a case of that they've been bullied, they've been segregated, they've been picked on, maybe they were dirty, maybe they were not having the cool clothes? maybe that's why they don't want to go to education. So you have to keep things like this in mind. There could be a number of repercussions of offending behaviour. Again, we've mentioned substance abuse again, and obviously the impact of a poor diet. You've got the impact of the child refusing health appointments. Now, this is a big one that I recognise from my time in residential. Children and young people often refuse health appointments. I have worked with children and young people that want health appointments all the time, but a large majority do actually refuse to go. Ask yourself why. Why don't they want to go to these health appointments? Are they being stubborn? Are they being defiant? Are they just trying to pick a fight? They're scared. Scared. It's the unknown. They perhaps haven't attended health appointments before, or they've been so ill-educated from their parents that they believe that there's nothing wrong with them and they don't need to go to places such as this. So when you are, or if you do come up against a child that's refusing to attend a health appointment, try and break it down and figure out why. Why are they not wanting to go? Also as well, very relevant for some of you, is the impact of a child going missing from care. When a child goes missing from care, they are at significant danger, and things can happen whilst they're missing that can actually have an impact on their life and their outcomes. I've experienced it firsthand with some of my young people when they've gone missing. Things have happened when they've been missing, which I expect they probably will never forget. So that's why we follow all of the safety procedures when a child goes missing, trying to get them home as safely and as quickly as possible. So we're going to outline some frameworks in supporting positive outcomes for children and young people. So at this point, I want you to think about your company that you work for in your home. What sort of policies and procedures do you follow? So I've put a few on here and I've listed them again. Refrain from listing. This is just for demonstration purposes. So engagement sessions or key working sessions, whichever you call them. You have this multi-agency approach, a very holistic approach for the children and young people. You have these individual care plans. These are personalised specifically for the individual child. Again, their risk assessments are all individualised. You may have behaviour and monitoring forms. You may have positive and negative consequences. You may have incentive charts. Obviously, education is a big factor, isn't it? You will follow your positive relationship policy. And again, you'll be delivering that therapeutic approach. You are therapeutic. You offer a therapeutic service and therapeutic parenting. So you will offer a therapeutic approach. And obviously, you know, lots of you have in-house psychologists. So you will be offering the child or young person an opportunity to work with a psychologist. So the next question we're going to look at is describe the positive outcomes for children and young people that residential childcare services aim to achieve. So what does your home, your company, what is it striving to achieve for these children and young people? We're striving to achieve a child-focused approach, respecting the individual, managing positive relationships and attachments. We're striving to develop their own skills and knowledge. We are developing their ability to empathise. Lots of children in care struggle with empathy. We are striving to build resilience, integrate them into the community in a positive way. Building that independence, one of the big things that you do. Educating them, learning them and developing them. Teaching them how to self-regulate and manage their own behaviours. One of the biggest ones. It's all fine and well having a child in your care and supporting them to do this and to do that, and then de-escalating them when they get heightened, and you're regulating them and you're bringing them back down to baseline. Well, you're not always going to be there. So we need to ensure that we are teaching them how to regulate themselves. Promoting healthy lifestyles, educating them around what to eat, what not to eat, how to behave, getting the good sleep patterns, all of these things, you'll be promoting a healthy lifestyle. Risk management and supporting the young people to manage their own risks. Massive. It's a massive, massive important thing. If you researched how a young person or children use risks to develop, it's really, really, really important. It's an imperative part of a child's life. A child will develop by learning how to manage their own risks and recognising their own personal boundaries around risks. Supporting them to have healthy relationships with peers. Teaching them financial life skills and seeking employment. So you're going to teach them about budgeting, you're going to teach them about cooking, you're going to teach them about paying bills. And you're going to teach them how to manage their own mental health. You're going to give them their strategies that supports them, but you're also going to ensure that you're going to signpost them to professionals, helping them to understand where they need to go should they need any additional support. So what is the importance of active participation? So this question is the importance of active participation of children and young people in decisions affecting their lives. It is important to encourage a child or young person to actively participate in decisions. When your young person is making decisions, they're more likely to follow the goals, the targets, the plans that have been put in place by yourself and the child. It gives them a sense of feeling in control and feels like they're making their own choices. So therefore, they're more likely to actually engage. Therefore, it actually increases the chances of success for that child and for you to succeed with them. Whilst they're also making these decisions and feeling like they're involved in planning for their future, it builds their self-esteem, it builds their confidence, it gives them a sense of worth, belief, and it also, one of my big words is, if I've heard me say it before, it makes them accountable as well. Accountability is something that seems to be disappearing with children across the board. So it's really important for you to teach children how to be accountable, and how you're going to do that is by encouraging them to be involved with decision making. It will also support them to build their independence. And I just put in there as well, how have you supported a child or young person to participate in decision making? Think about how you've done it. Key works, having a chat with them whilst you're gone out for a drive. So why is it important for practitioners to have high expectations and ambitions for all the children and young people? Children are able to live up to what you believe of them. Since the late 1960s, solid evidence has been suggested that parental beliefs and attitudes largely influence children's outcomes. Several studies have been found that when parents set great expectations, their children are more likely to meet those expectations. In other words, the expectations we hold for our children are critical in determining their academic and social outcomes. It is therefore important for practitioners to have a hands-on approach with children and young people in their care, to be aware of their abilities and to have high expectations. And I've put on here, as Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think that you can't, you're right. It's really, really important to set these expectations for the young people. But whilst we're setting these expectations, we have to be mindful, because expectation levels are individualized to the children and the young people. Children and young people are all different, as we well know. So it's important to encourage them to strive for greatness and to push for their personal best. So it's very, very important. So when you're answering this question, I want to hear about the importance, or maybe you've got an example, maybe you've done this, maybe you've encouraged a young person to push hard and follow their dreams, or work harder to push their grades up in education, or whichever it is. And I've just put a little paragraph here. It's important for us to have high expectations and aims to encourage accomplishments for children and young people. They require guidance, education and support in relation to achieving their personal best, and it's our responsibility to provide the best tools to aid their journey. Positivity can be infectious, so by role modelling the enthusiasm for their success, it will inevitably increase their desire for achievement. So let's have a look at the impact of disability and how can this have on positive outcomes and life chances for children and young people. So when discussing disabilities in this context, it can extend to a wide range of conditions and difficulties. So you've got physical disabilities, learning disabilities, dyslexia, special educational needs, sensory impairments, complex needs, long-term medical needs. What impact can these different disabilities, what can they have on the positive outcome of a child or a young person? Well, if you look at all of these individually and work out what can actually prevent them from developing and progressing further. So let's look at dyslexia. So you've got a young person, a child who has dyslexia, and they are not given the tools that they need to be able to progress in education. They're not able to have the additional support in school. They're not able to have the screen to support them visually seeing the letters correctly. They're not able to have that extra time for their exams. This will hinder them massively. And if you hinder somebody at a lower stage of their lives, is in even primary school, it's going to have a knock-on effect, because they're not going to be able to attain their actual achievable goals, because they've not had the tools to support them. So if you look at later in life, if a child has not been given the tools when they have dyslexia to be able to complete education, later in life, again, we're going to have those problems of not being able to find adequate employment, even result into crime because they can't find a good job to pay for their homelessness, and so on and so forth. It will have a rippling effect. You've obviously got physical disabilities. If there isn't any specific measures in place to be able to support a young person to be able to access clubs or shops or even education provisions, this will have a massive impact. So when you're answering this question, if you've not had any personal experience with this as yet, then I'd like to see an example of how you would support this and how you would try and recognise where the additional support would be needed. So what is the importance of having a positive attitude towards disabilities? That's the next question. A positive attitude can contribute to a strong relationship between practitioners and children and young people. It can also improve self-esteem within the child or the young person. Practitioners and residential childcare organisations must ensure they plan, monitor situations and activities well so they are able to offer an inclusive support without any issues. There is a good that this could include preparing appropriate ways of working with other staff to offer that individualised touch. So this could be seeking out additional resources, it could be seeking out additional equipment, helping a young person to be able to communicate, to move around more freely on their own. Is very important to be promoting independence. We need to encourage the young people to do what they can do and not try and do everything for them. Consistency and continuity is the key. It needs to be consistent. So the next question is, how do you support a child or young person to make personal choices according to their own needs and abilities? So here's some examples. So this is some examples of what we're going to do. So we're going to be planning, monitoring and reviewing all the time. Biggest part of your job role is to plan, monitor and review. We are going to encourage the children to have achievements and to praise them and encourage them to achieve. We're going to be inclusive. We're going to ensure that the child is included in making these choices and being involved in their plans. We're going to build their self-esteem, encouraging them to strive and achieve whatever they want to achieve. And I said earlier, we're going to be promoting independence. It's one of the biggest things that we can do is promote independence. The more independent a child or young person is, whether it's feeding themselves, whether it's being able to wash themselves, dress themselves, it actually builds natural self-esteem and confidence. And then we're also going to take into account the child's accountability. We're going to encourage them to be accountable as well. So when you're answering this question, again, refrain from bullet points or brief answers. Answer in a sentence. Give some examples of methods that could be used, or you may have used them, of how you might support a young person to make these personal choices. You may do this by action additional supports from professionals. I said to you earlier about monitoring, reviewing and updating, recording and reporting, massive one. Offering that multi-agency approach, obviously, giving that holistic care, building those positive relationships, undertaking assessments, having that really strong line of communication between yourselves, all the professionals and the young people, undertaking these key works and engagement sessions as well. So this question is describing support which is available for children and young people with disabilities. So what support is available within your organisation? So everybody's organisation or company who is using this presentation are going to differ. I know that some of the larger companies actually have built-in therapists, and some of the smaller companies may have to seek the external support. So you may have access to speech and language therapists, You may need to seek access for additional learning supports. You could get support from other health professionals. The LAC health nurse will actually come into effect as well. Assisted technology. There's lots of digital electronic technology out there now that can assist a young person. We're going to identify some specialist services that might be needed. Transportation is obviously a big factor as well. So, can you explain the importance of designing support and services around the needs of the child and the young person? It is important to try and remove as many obstacles and barriers as possible without removing too much opportunity for the young people to overcome them of their own volition. By supporting development, progression, and endeavouring to make the tailored goals and targets more achievable, you increase their odds of not only success, but also their competency moving forward. This will in turn help their independence, growth, self-esteem, and confidence. This is the importance of designing these services around the child's needs. That's it. You have reached the end of positive outcomes. Thank you for attending the session.